Have you ever looked back at your childhood and wondered how you made it out alive? How you're still breathing, still standing, despite everything that was thrown at you? My name is Dorian Hale. I'm 31 now, a practicing attorney in Delaware. From the outside, it might seem like I have my life together. But the truth is, the man I am today was built from the rubble of a boyhood shattered by fear, silence, and survival. I grew up in a dusty corner of Georgia nowhere town with rusted mailboxes, faded porch swings, and red clay roads that clung to your shoes like the past clings to your soul. Our house looked like any other, quiet, and safe. But once that front door closed, all peace was gone. My father, Tom Hale, was the kind of man whose shadow darkened a room before his body even stepped into it. He was tall, always reeking of cheap bourbon, with hands like rope and a temper that waited for any excuse to explode. My mother, Linda, was the opposite's soft-spoken, graceful in sadness, and always trying to hold the pieces of our home together with nothing but her love and a fragile hope that one day things might change, but they never did. I was 6, the first time he hit me. I remember it too clearly. Snow outside, dinner on the table. I knocked over a glass of milk can accident, just a clumsy mistake. He was drunk, as usual, his face twisted into rage. You think this house is yours to mess up, he slurred. Before I even understood what I'd done, his hand smashed into my shoulder. I dropped like a stone. My mother lunged for me, wrapped her arms around my body like a shield. "Please, Tom, he's just a little boy," she cried. Her voice cracked in a way that haunts me even now. But he wasn't done. He grabbed her by the hair, tore her away from me, and rained punches down like she was the enemy. I stayed, curled up on the floor, hands over my ears, trying to pretend this wasn't my life. Have you ever heard someone you love cry like their soul was breaking? If so, you'll understand why that night never left me. Afterward, when he passed out upstairs, my mother swept up the shattered plate in silence. She sat on the edge of my bed, dabbing at the purple bruise blooming. "You have to be strong, okay?" she whispered. Her eyes shimmered, but not a single tear fell. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. Tell me, why is it always the kindest ones who carry the most guilt, okay?" She smelled like laundry detergent and sorrow. I didn't have the words, but in my heart I made a promise. One day I'd get us both out of there. But things only got worse. When my father lost his job at the lumber mill, the last sliver of control slipped through his fingers. From that moment on, the bottle became his best friend, and we became his punching bags. He drank from dawn to dusk, always finding something to explode over. One time, he hurled me across the living room just for laughing too loudly at a cartoon. I hit the wall so hard I couldn't move my left arm for days. My mother iced it at night, whispering lullabies through her trembling lips, like that would somehow keep me whole. If you're still reading this, I want to ask you something. What does home mean to you? Because to me, back then, home meant fear. It meant flinching every time keys jingled at the door. It meant learning how to read the air like weather stormy when he was drunk, dangerous when he was quiet. I want you to comment below. Have you ever lived in a house where love had to hide? Where silence was your only shield? Because if you have, I see you, and I promise you're not alone. And to those who were lucky enough to grow up in peace, never take that for granted. Let me know in the comments. What's one thing you would say to your younger self right now if you could? That's the part of my life most people don't know. Not because I hide it, but because it's too hard to explain, too messy, too dark. And honestly, who wants to hear about a little boy clinging to silence because his screams didn't matter? My name's Jordan, and this story begins when I was just a kid living in a weathered house in the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. My dad, Vincent, was a mechanic by day and a ghost by night. Mom worked the register at a gas station off Highway 17, always with a soft voice and eyes that looked like they'd cried out their shine years ago. One night, my mom dared to ask him where he'd been, just a question, and he beat her so bad she couldn't stand for hours. The bruises multiplied like shadows, but she still put on long sleeves the next day though the heat was pushing 98 degrees. That was her way. Hide it. Endure it. Smile just enough to pass. And yet strangely, those summer nights under the old oak tree in our backyard, that's where I learned what love really looked like. After every beating, she'd whisper, "Come on, sweetheart," and we'd tiptoe outside like fugitives chasing peace. We'd sit on the dry grass under that huge tree, its thick branches swallowing the moonlight. She'd tell me stories, sometimes fairy tales, sometimes ones she made up just to make me laugh. Then one night, her voice broke a little as she looked up and said, "Jordan, do you see how the stars are still out, even when everything's dark?" I nodded, silent. She continued, "You've got to be like that, always shining, even when life gets hard." That moment, it carved itself into me like a tattoo on the soul. Her words became a lighthouse I'd return to every time I felt lost. But even light has limits. Some nights, her screams would rip through the walls like wild thunder. I'd crawl into the closet, shut the door, hug my pillow, and whisper nonsense into the dark. I felt like a coward, too small to fight back, too weak to protect her. I hated that about myself, but I hated him more. I hated that he turned our home into something hell would envy. And I'll be honest, I hated the world a little, too. Because no one ever came, no one ever knocked, no one asked. But then Lily was born. I was 8 when she came into our world. This tiny miracle with moonlight skin and big doe eyes. And for the first time in forever, there was laughter in our house that wasn't fake. Lily became the sun in our storm. Her giggles, her warm fit softened something in Mom and even bent my dad in a way I didn't think possible. With her, he was different. He never yelled, never hit. He'd cradle her and say, "You're my treasure." And you know what? He sounded like he meant it. I didn't understand it. Why her? Why not Mom? Why not me? But a part of me was just relieved. Relieved that maybe Lily would never know the world I knew. That maybe she'd grow up whole. Still, his love for her made me feel more alone. One day, I accidentally dropped one of Lily's toys, just a plastic elephant. It rolled under the couch, and before I could reach it, he was already on me. One slap, hard and sharp. My ears rang. My balance went crooked. "How dare you make your sister cry?" he roared. But Lily hadn't cried over the toy. She cried because she saw me get hit. She ran to me, arms wide, her tiny voice sobbing my name. But Dad yanked her away like I was. Poison held her close, whispered comfort. He never comforted me. That moment I still carry. It wasn't the pain of the slap that hurt most, it was being treated like I didn't matter in front of someone I loved more than myself. Let me ask you, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? If you're still here, if this story touched something in you, drop a comment. Tell me what kept you going through your darkest nights. Because, for me, it was an oak tree, a few stars, and the sound of my mother's voice saying, "Shine anyway." What would you do if the person you trusted to protect you was the one you feared most? That question haunted me every single night growing up. I remember one evening I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the boy staring back. Not because I looked different, but because I had become so used to hiding the truth. I couldn't tell where the lies ended and I began. I wasn't just pretending for my classmates or teachers. I was pretending for myself. And the worst part, I got good at it. I remember the night everything broke in half. My mother stood frozen in the hallway, her eyes swollen and red. She looked at me like she was apologizing without words. Then she pulled me and my little sister, Lily, into her arms and whispered, "No matter what happens, I love you both. You'll always have me." But even at 10, I could feel it's something inside her was crumbling. And deep down, I think she knew she couldn't hold on forever. I learned early how to disappear in my own home. I stayed quiet when he drank. I ducked around corners. I got real good at covering bruises with long sleeves and fake smiles. I didn't want sympathy. I just didn't want anyone to know. Because once someone knows, they start looking at you different. Like you're broken. Like you'll never be okay again. But I saw her, my mother. Every time she winced when she moved, every time she turned her face to hide a mark, I saw it. And my heart tore a little more. About the day I'd be big enough, strong enough to take her and Lily away. Somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere he could never find us. By 13, everything was worse. The drinking, the screaming, the violence. One night, he struck her so hard she collapsed on the kitchen floor. I ran to her, yelling, "Stop, you're going to kill her." But he didn't even blink. He turned to me, those cold eyes empty of anything human, and kicked me across the room. I hit the floor hard, but the pain didn't matter. I watched her lie there, unmoving, and I thought, this is it. She came to a few minutes later. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mason," she said, "you have to survive. For me, for Lily." I nodded. But inside, something changed. I stopped waiting. I started planning. I knew one day it would be up to me. So I studied hard, even though every day felt like I was dragging myself through quicksand. I told myself, if I could just get good enough grades, if I could just win a scholarship, I could get us out. I didn't care about prom or football games. I cared about survival. But I also knew I was racing against the clock, and I wasn't sure how much time we had left at 16. While other kids were getting driver's licenses or sneaking into movies, I was learning how to read every shift in my father's mood. Our home felt like it was balancing on a wire, swaying dangerously in the wind. The fight between him and my mom became daily, and they weren't always about us anymore. There was someone else, a woman, one I never saw, but whose name started creeping into the shouting matches like poison. My mom almost never stood up to him, but the few times she did only made things worse. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen someone you love lose the light in their eyes? Like the moment they stopped hoping, stopped fighting, and just surrendered. I saw that happen to my mother, and it terrified me more than anything my father ever did. What would you have done in my place? Would you have run, fought back, stayed quiet? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from people who understand, who've been through something, or who never want anyone else to. Because this story isn't just about pain. It's about what you do with it. And we're just getting started. Have you ever walked into your own home and felt something so wrong it made your skin crawl before you even understood why? That's what happened the day everything changed. I was 16, just a regular kid in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I had a little sister, Lily, and a mom who tried so hard to keep the pieces of our broken house from cutting us. My dad, he was the kind of man whose presence could choke a room loud, cruel, and always smelling like Jack Daniel's dot. There was one night I'll never forget. I was in the hallway when I heard my mom scream, "If you bring her here, I swear I'll kill myself right in front of you." Then came his voice, slurred but sharp. "You dare threaten me? You're nothing, Marlene, nothing. You think a useless woman like you can stop me?" The words burned into me. I stood there frozen, listening, my fists clenched, wishing I could do something. Anything after that. My mom changed. She stopped humming while cooking. Her eyes seemed stuck somewhere far away. Once, I found her alone in the kitchen, sitting. In the dark, hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, like it was her last warmth on earth. "Mom," I whispered, stepping in. "Are you okay?" She gave me a smile, but it was hollow. Her lips moved, but her eyes didn't. "I'm fine, Jackson," she said softly. "Just look after Lily, okay?" That broke me. She was shielding us, even as she was breaking apart. That's when I started writing it all down. Every fight, every bottle, every bruise. I filled the pages of an old notebook, then hid it beneath a loose floorboard in my room. I wasn't sure what I was doing, just a desperate kid, grabbing at anything that felt like control. Maybe, I hoped, the truth written in ink could one day protect us when my hands couldn't. Then came that day. It was a gray Thursday in October. Rain tapping the windows like a whisper of warning. I'd stayed late at school, finishing my history paper. When I finally pushed open our front door, something thumped. Off-died, no yelling, no TV buzzing in the background, no sound of Lily playing with her dolls, no scent of coffee or my mom's quiet humming from the kitchen. Just my dad on the couch. An empty bottle resting against the carpet like a tombstone. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. She fell, he said, flatly. Down the stairs. She's at the hospital. I felt the ground slip under me. What? How? I asked, my voice cracking. What did you do? That's when he exploded. He stood up, fast, grabbed me by the collar. You don't talk to me like that. He roared. I didn't do a damn thing. She fell. Got it. Then he shoved me down like I was a fly he couldn't be bothered to swat again. He turned away, mumbling about getting more liquor. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I just ran. No jacket. No phone. Just raw panic, driving my feet toward the hospital. What do you do when the person who raised you is gone? The one who took their place might be the reason why. By the time I made it to the hospital, I was out of breath. A nurse guided me down the hallway, past the humming machines and antiseptic air, until I saw her. My little sister, Lily, curled up on a bench, her eyes red and swollen, clutching the old fabric doll Mom had stitched from scraps when we had nothing but love. Logan, she cried, running straight into my arms. She won't wake up, Logan. Mommy won't wake up. I held her so tight, I thought my chest would cave in. My mouth stayed shut, but inside I was unraveling. A storm, a hurricane of disbelief, anger, fear. Cracked dot, there she was, my mother, her body still, her arms bruised, her neck marked with the kind of violence that tells a story no one wants to say out loud. Like she was already halfway gone. The doctor, a man in his 50s, with kind eyes that said more than his mouth dared to, broke the silence. Severe trauma to the head. We believe she fell down the stairs. I'm so sorry. We did everything we could. Did she fall, or was she pushed? I stood there. I don't remember for how long. I only remember her hand in mine, cold, not just cold, silent. Like all her love had slipped through my fingers. I couldn't cry. I couldn't move. I didn't even realize Lily had come in until she hugged my leg, sobbing. But I didn't believe a word of it. The days that followed were a blur of whispers and stares. My father, the man who used to smell of cedar and motor oil, showed up to the funeral in a wrinkled jacket, stinking of cheap bourbon, and didn't even look Lily in the eyes. Not once. He stood by the casket, nodding politely like it was some chore, some role he had to play. Meanwhile, the neighbors filed in with casseroles and condolences. But they didn't believe it either. They looked at the bruises on Mom's neck the way someone looks at a loaded gun, quietly terrified but unwilling to call it what it is. They whispered behind hands. Such a terrible accident. But their eyes said it all. They knew. They all knew. And yet, no one said a thing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand on that church pew and shout, "My mom didn't just fall. He did it. He pushed her. He killed her." But what did I have? A few pages in a notebook with things I'd overheard. The arguments, the threats, the slammed doors, the silence. That kind of proof doesn't hold up in court. And I was just a 16-year-old kid. No one listens to kids like me. That night, after the funeral, I couldn't sleep. The room felt colder than usual, or maybe I was just empty. I kept replaying her voice in my head, mom's voice. Just a few days before she died, she hugged me tight, her hands shaking, and she said, "Logan, you're my hope. No matter what happens, you keep going, okay? Stay strong." Hope, hope felt like a joke now. But those words kept echoing, not like advice, like a mission. Would you have believed me if you were in my shoes? Would you have stayed silent, too? Drop a comment below. What would you have done in my place? That night, I made a promise to myself. I might have been just a kid. I might not have had proof. But I was going to protect Lily. I was going to honor Mom's last words, and someday he'd pay. Have you ever kept a promise that later felt like a betrayal? One you made with your whole heart only to realize too late that it wasn't enough. What kept me awake at night? I told my mom I'd protect her. But now she was gone, and I hadn't done a damn thing to stop it. Worse than the grief was the endless loop of doubt that played in my head, because, deep down, I didn't believe she just fell down those stairs. In her final months, the house had turned into a war zone. I remember the fights, the screaming, behind closed doors, and that one night I can't shake Mom standing her ground, voice shaking but firm. "Ben, don't lie to me. I know you're seeing her again. How long this time?" She meant Clara. My dad didn't even flinch, just laughed, that cruel, dismissive laugh. Called her paranoid. "You've lost it, Karen." But I saw it right then. In his eyes, fear, not guilt. Fear, like she knew something she shouldn't. Did she finally find proof? Was that what sealed her fate? I started digging, alone. I'd wait until he passed out with a drink in his hand, then search his room like my life depended on it. One night, tucked behind a stack of bills in his desk drawer, I found an old burner phone. I didn't even know people still used those. The messages were all still there. Him and Clara, sweet, then ugly. Karen knows. She blow this up. I'll fix it. Just trust me. My stomach dropped. My hands shook. At 16, I knew this wouldn't be enough for the police, but it sure as hell wasn't nothing. I had to tell someone, anyone, so I went to the one adult I trusted, Miss Harper, my English teacher. She was sharp, kind, the kind who remembered your name and looked you in the eye. I told her everything. She read the texts quietly, then set the phone down and looked at me. Michael, this is serious, but it's not enough. Not yet. And you can't confront your father. It's too dangerous. But hearing it out loud made it worse. The truth was burning inside me, but I had no power to do anything about it. My mom was dead, and I was just a kid in a house full of lies. 2 weeks after the funeral, Clara showed up, not as a guest, as a replacement. She walked through the door like she'd lived there her whole life. Arm hooked through my father's, hair curled to perfection, that sugary voice making my skin crawl. She laughed at his dumb jokes. Tate in my mother's seat, used her coffee mug. Ashdem mug. I stood there, stunned. Who is she? I blurted, shaking with rage. My father didn't even blink. This is Clara. She's moving in. If you've got a problem, the door's right there. The slap I felt wasn't physical, but it might as well have been. Every part of me wanted to lash, outscream, hit, throw something, but I didn't. Not because I was scared, because I was waiting. Then I saw my little sister, Maddie, hiding behind the hallway wall. Eyes wide, frozen. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about my mom anymore. Maddie was still here. And I wasn't going anywhere. So I swallowed the fire inside and nodded like I accepted it. But deep down, something shifted. This house, T, wasn't home anymore. It was a trap, draped in cheap perfume and staged smiles. And I was about to find a way to tear the whole thing down. What do you do when you're only 16 and the world you once knew turns into something out of a nightmare? That question haunted me every night as I lay awake, listening to the low creak of floorboards and the ticking of the old hallway clock. The air in our house was thick, heavy, with a sharp stink of whiskey and something worse. Fear. The kind of fear that clings to your skin, seeps into your clothes, and never really washes off. And in the middle of it all was Clara. She was in every corner of that house. Sitting in the kitchen chair my mom used to read recipes in. Standing in front of the same stove that once simmered with Mom's chicken noodle soup. And every time she spoke, it felt like the whole house tilted just a little more off balance. She barked orders like a drill sergeant. Lily, mop the floor, agent, streaky. Lily, don't slouch. Always, Lily, always cutting into her like she wasn't just a kid still grieving our mom. And Lily, my sweet little sister, was slipping away. I could see it in her eyes. Each time Clara raised her voice, Lily flinched like she'd been slapped, even when she hadn't. I hated it. I hated the way Clara pretended to belong in our house, like she had any right. I hated how my father let it all happen, drowning himself in liquor while his daughter was being broken in front of him. I tried to be the anchor, to stay calm, to hold Lily's hand at night and whisper stories that weren't true but felt like hope. Someday we'll go far away, just you and me, I told her. I was 16 and I had nothing, no money, no car, no adult who'd listen, but I gave her that promise anyway. One night, she asked me, voice barely audible under her blanket, "Mason, you won't leave me, too, right?" That broke me. I pulled her close and whispered, "Never. You are my whole world." But that promise was a boulder on my chest. Because what if I couldn't keep it? I'd just gotten off a long shift bagging groceries, my palms raw from cardboard and cold air. I'd been stashing every dollar I made, hoping one day I'd have enough to take Lily and disappear. But that night, when I walked in, I heard shouting. Clara's voice sliced through the dark like a blade. "You're just like your useless mother, clumsy and stupid." Her words rang out as I rounded the corner, all because Lily had dropped a glass of water. She stood there, frozen, cheeks wet with tears. My baby sister, I didn't think. I shouted, stepping into the room like I was twice my size. Clara spun around, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, look who's suddenly grown a pair. You think you can talk to me like that, huh?" She took a step forward, hand raised. But this time, I was ready. I caught her wrist mid-swing. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear myself. "Don't ever touch me or Lily again," I said through clenched teeth. Right then, the front door opened. My father stumbled in, half-empty bottle in one hand, the stink of booze thick in the air. "What the hell's going on in here?" he growled. Clara didn't miss a beat. She stormed over to him, finger pointed, straight at me. "Your son, your precious little Mason just threatened me. He thinks he runs this house now." Her voice was sugar-coated venom, sweet enough to poison Dot. "Now let me ask you this, Sif, you were 16, watching your sister being torn down piece by piece, and your own father looked at you like you were the problem, ... What would you do? Drop a comment if you've ever felt like you were the only one holding your world together. I want to hear from you, because that moment, that was the night everything changed. Would you have stood up to, or stayed quiet and survived? Let me know. Below, have you ever stood up for someone you love and paid the price for it? I did, and it changed everything. It happened on a Thursday evening, just before dinner. My father stormed into the living room, reeking of bourbon and fury. His face was flushed, his words slurred but sharp. You think you make the rules now. You think this is your house. His voice shook the walls. I could barely get the words out. My hands clenched at my sides. Clara screamed at Lily. I told her to stop. That's it. I didn't touch her. I was protecting my sister. That set him off. He came at me fast, grabbed my collar, and yanked me toward the front door. My shoes scraped against the hardwood. You want to act like a man? Fine. Go survive like one. His breath stank of rage and rot. He flung the door open, shoved me out into the cold, and slammed it shut. I heard the deadbolt click like a gun cocking. That was it. I was no longer his son, not in his eyes. Not in that moment. Rain started falling as I sat there on the steps, shivering, wet, and humiliated. My backpack was the only thing I had left. Inside, just my grocery store uniform. No money, no food, no plan. And through the door, I could hear Lily crying. My little sister. My best friend. The only part of home I ever cared about. I wanted to run back in, grab her, and disappear. But what could I do? My dad was built like a linebacker and twice as mean when he was drunk. I knew if I stayed, he'd hurt me worse. So I walked. I wandered aimlessly through dark streets, hugging my bag like it could protect me. The night was biting cold. Every gust of wind cut deeper. I ended up at the park, tucked beneath an old jungle gym, praying nobody would notice me. My arms wrapped tight around my knees. I stared up at the sky and whispered, "What now, Mom?" But only the wind responded. She used to sit with me under a tree in the backyard and say, "Be brave, sweetheart. You're stronger than you know." I didn't feel strong. I felt like a ghost. By sunrise, my body was aching. I couldn't go back. I couldn't sleep in parks forever either, so I took a chance. I went to the only place I thought I might be welcome, Tommy's house. He was my best friend since 3rd grade. I stood on his porch for a long time before I knocked. When he opened the door and saw me soaked, broken, hollow, he didn't ask anything. He just pulled me into a hug. His mom, Miss Linda, was the kind of woman who made a house feel warm just by standing in it. She saw me, really saw me, and knew something terrible had happened. She didn't pry. She just made me eggs, poured me a hot cup of coffee, and sat me down. Eventually, I told her everything. The fights, the drinking, Clara's temper, Lily's fear, and that final shove into the rain. I'll never forget what she did next. She wrapped her arms around me, this kid who barely even cried anymore, let me sob into her sweater like I was 5 again. No judgment, no conditions. She let me stay for a few nights, gave me a bed, a quiet room, safety, but I knew I couldn't stay forever. Tommy's dad wasn't around, and I didn't want to make their lives harder. I didn't want my father showing up at their door either. I had to find another path. That's when I remembered my aunt, my mom's sister. Her name was Carol. She lived a few hours away in a small city called Willow Ridge. She hadn't spoken to my dad in years, but I remembered her laugh. How she used to sneak us candy when Mom wasn't looking. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. Now, I want to ask you, what would you have done? Would you have stayed where it was warm, or risked everything for the chance to build your own life? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your story, too, because this isn't just about me. It's about every kid who got thrown out. Not for doing wrong, but for standing up for what's right. And maybe, just maybe, we can remind each other that walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the first step toward finding who you really are. That question haunted me every mile I put between myself and that house. My name's Jordan, and this isn't just a story. It's what saved me. Or at least, what stopped me from falling apart. After Mom passed, I didn't have many people left. But there was one, my Aunt Carla. She and Mom had once been like sisters. Should be close, warm, protective. But when Mom married my father, Carla pulled away. She couldn't tolerate the man he was. At the funeral, she stood off to the side, crying quietly, her husband holding her hand. Still, when it was over, she came to me. "If you ever need anything," she whispered, "call me." I held on to that sentence like a life vest. Days later, I picked up the phone and dialed. "Aunt Carla," I said, my voice barely holding. "Together, I don't know what to do. Lily's still there, with him and that woman. I can't leave her, but I can't go back either." There was silence for maybe half a second. Then her voice came sharp and steady. "Come here. Now, we'll figure out how to get Lily out. I'll take care of you until then." Her words cut through my panic like headlights on a foggy road. I could breathe again. Not all the way, but enough. Linda, the neighbor who'd been keeping me afloat with leftovers and kindness, walked me to the bus station. She tucked a wrinkled $20 and a sandwich into my hand. "You're tougher than you think, Jordan," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Don't forget your sister. And don't forget, you matter, too." I nodded, hugged her, boarded the bus as the town shrank behind me through the scratched-up window. I didn't cry, but something cracked inside. That place had broken pieces of me on. I was leaving them behind. For Lily, for Mom, for the boy I still wanted to be. The bus ride wasn't long in miles, but it felt endless. My legs bounced. My fingers twisted. The strap of my backpack. I kept replaying things in my head. Mom's last week's. The bruises she thought we didn't notice. Lily's scared eyes at the funeral. Dad's silence. I hated him, not with fire, with ice. And I hated how powerless I felt, but I reminded myself, Carla will help. She's real. She saw it all once. She believed me. And she did. She was waiting at the bus station, eyes swollen, makeup smudged, but her smile was solid. She pulled me into a hug, so tight I could barely breathe, and for the first time in days. I didn't want to escape someone's arms. You're safe now, she said, brushing my hair back. You've been through hell, but you're not alone anymore. She brought me to her home, just outside Portland. A one-story place with squeaky floors, warm lighting, and photos of dogs on the fridge. Carla's husband, Rick, was this big ex-linebacker guy with a ponytail and a soft handshake. Glad you're here, kid, he said. We've got your back. And they did. I ate. I slept. I went to school. But inside, I was a ghost. I'd sit in class, pretending to care about algebra while wondering if Lily was eating dinner or hiding in a closet. At night, I'd stare at the ceiling and ask myself the question no one wants to face. What if I don't make it in time? I reached out to my friend Brian. He still lived down the street from my dad's place. I begged him to check on Lily. He did. Said she was still going to school, but she looked drained, sad, quieter than before. That lit something in me. I knew I couldn't wait forever, but I also knew I needed to get my feet under me before I rushed in like some hero in a bad movie. Carla and Rick helped with that. They didn't smother me with questions. They gave me space, structure, safety, and that gave me something I hadn't had in a long time, a fighting chance. Now, let me ask you something. If someone you love was still trapped in the fire you escaped, would you walk away, or would you go back in? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you'd do, because this is where my story really begins. Have you ever had a dream that didn't feel like a dream at all, but more like a warning? Like someone you love was reaching across time, across reality, to beg you not to forget. That's what kept happening to me. Every night, I'd see my mother. She was standing under the same oak tree from our old backyard, barefoot, her dress swaying in the breeze. She'd smile softly, almost sadly, then say, "Daniel, you have to save Lily." And just like that, I'd wake up, soaked in sweat, heart racing like I'd been running. It didn't matter how many nights passed. Her voice never changed. Her face never faded. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to go back to the house we escaped, back to the people we didn't living with my aunt and uncle was like stepping into a completely different universe. Aunt Martha's tiny two-bedroom apartment always smelled like warm cinnamon rolls. The walls were painted soft yellow, and the living room windows let in gentle light every morning. After everything I'd been through, it felt like stepping out of darkness and into something human again. But peace doesn't always quiet the storm inside you, even in that calm place. Lily's eyes haunted me, big, terrified. Her little frame always curled up, shrinking away from Clara's sharp voice, her cruel hands. I saw it even when I blinked. I heard it in the silence between Aunt Martha's humming and Uncle Ray's news broadcasts. I couldn't ignore it. I didn't want to. It was the only thing keeping me from going numb. I started putting my life back together. A new school gave me clothes, books, a locker with my name on it. Uncle Ray taught me some basic self-defense moves. Every man's got to know how to protect what matters, he said one evening, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. I nodded like I understood, but inside, I knew punches wouldn't fix this, not with a man like my father. Like Clara, what I needed wasn't just strength. I needed a plan and time. Still, time is tricky when your sister's in danger, so I told Aunt Martha everything. I mean everything. My father's outbursts, how my mom died without answers, the bruises Clara left on Lily's arms. I expected doubt or panic, but Martha just sat there, her fingers twisting the edge of her apron, tears clinging to her lashes. "Oh, Daniel," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I should have taken you both in years ago. I thought it wasn't that bad. It's not your fault," I told her gently. "But now I need your help. I have to get Lily out." She nodded, slowly, like the weight of it was sinking in. "We'll do it," she said, "but we'll be careful. Your father's not a man you challenge without thinking." Then Uncle Ray, who'd been quiet the whole time, sitting on the couch with his arms crossed, stood up and walked over. He put his hand on my shoulder and looked me square in the eye. "No one lays a finger on your sister again," he said. "You're not going back there alone. I've got you." Uncle Ray was a mountain of a man. Used to play college football before he blew out his knee. He didn't talk much, but when he made a promise, it stuck. With him, I didn't just feel safer. I felt like we had a shot. We packed a bag that night just essentials. I threw my sketchbook in, some snacks, and a flashlight. Then I sat in the back seat of Ray's truck, gripping my backpack like it was armor. The road back to my hometown took 3 hours, but it felt like I was traveling back in time. Through every memory I'd locked away, Martha sat in the front beside Ray. She kept turning around, squeezing my hand whenever the silence got too loud. "It'll be okay, Daniel," she whispered. "We're bringing Lily home." And I believed her, or at least needed to. Because if I didn't believe it, I don't know how I would have held myself together. Have you ever walked into a place that used to be home and felt like it was holding its breath, waiting to crush you? Exactly how it felt when we reached the edge of town. It was almost noon. The sun hung low like it didn't even want to shine on the place. Our old house, Sif, you could still call it, that looked like a skeleton barely holding itself together. Paint peeled in long strips. Dust coated the windows like frostbite. The front yard was a mess of tall grass and dead things that refused to die. I stared at it for a moment, chest tight. "I'll go in first," I said, voice low. "You and Uncle Mike wait for my signal." Mike frowned and shook his head. "We go in together. It's safer." I wanted to argue, but one look at him arms, folded eyes, sharp killed any debate. So we stepped onto the porch as a team. Each board under my feet creaked like it was warning us. My heart felt like it was trying to punch through my ribs. I raised my hand, knocked on the door. "Emma." "It's me," I called out. Silence. I knocked again, harder. The door cracked open fast, like it had been watching. There stood Vanessa's arms, crossed, mouth twisted, her eyes cold as knives. "What do you want?" she snapped. I didn't answer her. I pushed past and stepped into the hallway. The stench of whiskey and mildew slapping me in the face. "Emma," I shouted. A small voice floated back from the hallway. "Liam." I ran, didn't care who was yelling behind me. I pushed open the door, and there she was, my sister, sitting on the edge of the bed like a ghost, clutching a dirty stuffed fox. A red mark burned across her cheek. She looked at me, and then broke. "You left me," she sobbed. I dropped to my knees, wrapping my arms around her small, shaking body. "Never, Emma. I never left you. I'm here now. I promise."
But the moment shattered with Vanessa's shriek behind me. "What the hell do you think you're doing? This is my house." And then I saw him. My father, or what was left of him. He staggered from the living room, one hand gripping a bottle like it was his last friend on earth. His words slurred, but his eyes burned with the same old hate. "You've got some nerve. Coming back here," he hissed, stepping forward. But Uncle Mike blocked him with a calm that could freeze fire. "Back off, Ray," he said, quiet but firm. "We're taking Emma. Don't make this worse." There was a flicker in Dad's eyes. "Not just rage fear," he barked. "She's my daughter. You can't just. That's when Aunt Carol stepped forward, arms stiff, face stone. You beat my sister, Ray. You let your little girlfriend torment Emma while you drank yourself to death. You're not a father, you're a coward. Vanessa screamed, liar. I never touched that brat. Emma clung tighter to my hoodie. Her voice cracked raw. She hit me. When Dad wasn't watching, that was it. I stood, shielding Emma with my body. We're leaving. Try to stop us, and you'll regret it. My dad froze. I could see him calculating his next drink. His next excuse, whatever came easier. Mike stepped forward just an inch, and Dad backed off. Not because he cared, because he was scared. Vanessa spat something foul, but Carol had her by the arm before she could finish. Enough. You don't belong here, she said, dragging her outside. We walked out as one. Emma's small hand wrapped in mine, her stuffed fox swinging at her side. She didn't look back. Neither did I. My father stood in the doorway, but he didn't follow. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe, deep down, he knew this was over. Maybe that's the moment he realized he had already lost us long ago. That question haunts me. It's what I still ask myself every time I look at my little sister's face. When I opened the car door and Lily ran into my arms, she sobbed so hard it made my ribs hurt. I thought you weren't coming back, she cried. I kissed the top of her head, my own tears falling freely. I'm here, Lily. I'm never leaving again. She curled up against me in the back seat and fell asleep on my chest before we were halfway down the highway. Her breathing slowed, her small face finally relaxed. In the front seat, Sarah glanced at us through the mirror and smiled. You did good, Nathan. I nodded, but the guilt clawed deeper. Did I really do good? Or had I just fixed something I should have never let happen in the first place? Back at Sarah's house, Lily was wrapped in warm towels, given a bath, and fed up dinner she actually finished. When she smiled, really smiled. Not just that polite flicker she used to mask her fear. I felt something crack open inside me. A flicker of hope, but I couldn't let myself believe everything was over. Not yet. The ghosts were still out there, Dad, Clara, and all the memories we'd buried under silence and fear. I knew this wasn't the end of the road. It was only the beginning. I had to become stronger, not just for me, but for Lily, and for Mum. The days that followed were quiet, almost eerily so. I'd sit on the porch swing at Sarah's place, watching Lily in the backyard, brushing the hair of the old ragdoll our mum had sewn years ago. Sometimes she'd sing to it, soft and sweet. Other times, she'd hold it like a shield. She'd come to me, wrap her arms around my middle, and whisper, "Thank you, Nathan." And every time, my heart broke a little more, because I should have taken her out of that house sooner. I should have known. I should have fought harder. I should have seen it. But I hadn't, and for that, I'll always carry the weight, so I made myself a promise. From now on, no one would lay a hand on my sister, ever again. But I couldn't protect her with anger. I couldn't shield her with fists or fury. I needed something deeper, stronger, permanent. I needed the law. The idea hit me in a way that didn't feel new, more like remembering something I'd always known. Like a truth that had waited patiently for me to be ready. Mum had suffered for years in silence. Because she had no options, no help, no escape, no one who knew how to fight for her. I wanted to be that person. For her, for Lily, for every kid or mother trapped in the kind of life we'd barely crawled out of. One evening, over steaming mugs of peppermint tea, I finally told Aunt Sarah, "I think I want to study law," I said, trying to steady the tremor in my voice. "I want to become a lawyer. For people like Mum. For Lily." She didn't answer right away. She just stared at me for a long moment, like she was seeing not just the boy I was, but the man I might become. Then she nodded, once, deeply. "You'd be damn good at it," she said. "What about you? Have you ever made a promise so big, it scared you? Let me know in the comments. I'll read every one, and if you've ever wanted to protect someone, but didn't know how, maybe this is your sign. A single sentence one that cracked something open inside me. "I know it's a tough path," Mason and Claire said, her voice firm but warm. But you've got your mum's heart, strong, stubborn, in the best way. Hand wrapped around mine, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a Burdani felt seen, heard, wanted. Uncle Ray sat nearby, his reading glasses slipping down his nose as he folded the Sunday paper. Law, huh, he grunted, then looked up with a small smirk. That's no joke, kid. You'll have to work your tail off. But it's good work. Real work. There was a weight to his words, one that didn't come from doubt, but experience. A buddy of mine works downtown at a firm, he added. I can make an introduction. Give you a glimpse of what it's really like. My heart thudded. I nodded hard. Yes, please. It felt like something had cracked open. Finally, I had a direction. Finally, I had a shot. From that day on, I attacked school like my life depended on it. Maybe because in a weight, my new high school wasn't anything fancy, just a regular public school tucked behind a strip mall, but the teachers gave a damn. That mattered more than I realized. One afternoon, after I handed in an essay on To Kill a Mockingbird 2 days early, my literature teacher, Mrs. Jennings, gave me a curious look. You've changed, Mason. This is sharp work. What's fueling you lately? I hesitated. Then, quietly, I said, I want to be a lawyer. Her face lit up, not in a dramatic way, just ... real. Well, you've got a clear aim, that's half the battle, she said, sliding the paper back to me. If you want help, resources, feedback, whatever, I'm here. That simple offer cracked another door open. Mrs. Jennings started feeding me books on argument, justice, and writing. I soaked it all in, like dry soil meeting rain. By senior year, I had the grades, and more than that, I had purpose. I applied to a state university with a decent pre-law track, not expecting miracles. When the acceptance came, followed by a small scholarship, I stood in stunned silence. Claire cried. Ray made chili and invited the neighbors, and Lily, my little cousin, just 9 at the time, handed me a drawing. It was me, under an old oak, holding a book, with a woman behind me, drawn in soft, warm lines. Is that ... Mum? I asked. My throat tight. Lily nodded. Serious. You'll do it, Mason. You will. I hugged her so hard, she squeaked. For you, for her, I whispered. The day I left for college, Claire tucked cash into my jacket pocket. I wish I could give more, she said, eyes red. But this is my heart. Ray didn't say much, just gave me a rough pat on the shoulder and a nod. Keep going, son. So I left on a dusty bus that rattled and groaned down the interstate. I carried more than a suitcase. I carried the years of silence, the dreams I'd tucked away, the promise I'd made. College was war. I studied like it was the only way to breathe. Majored in political science. Took every law adjacent class I could find. Held to part-time jobs, one at the campus library, one stocking shelves at a nearby grocery store. There were nights I didn't sleep. Nights I thought of Lily and Mum. Nights I wanted to quit. But on my desk always was Lily's drawing. The oak, the book, the smile, and every time I looked at it, I remembered what was behind me and who I was fighting for. 4 years later, I crossed that stage and took my diploma, and I swear, just for a second, I could feel my mum standing under that oak again. What would you do if the man who haunted your childhood resurfaced not in a nightmare, but as a name on a legal file, and you were the one asked to bring him to justice? I still remember the moment my life felt like it was finally on track. I had just graduated with honors and gotten into a top law school in Boston. I called my best friend Emily, who had been with me through thick and thin. The moment she answered, I could hear her cheering on the other end. You're a lawyer now, Marcus. I laughed, wiping tears from my cheeks. Not yet, Em, but almost. Law school hit like a storm. It wasn't just about books and lectures, it was a proving ground. Minds clashed, morals collided. I found myself drawn to family law, especially cases involving domestic abuse. I read hundreds of case files, women terrified to leave, kids stuck in silent trauma. Each one ripped something open inside me. I couldn't help but see my own mother in those stories. The nights she sat alone in our kitchen, pretending the bruises didn't hurt. The way her smile faded over the years, replaced by silence. I made a silent vow I'd be the one who stood between families and fear. I wouldn't let what happened to my mum happen to anyone else. In my 3rd year, I started interning at a small but respected law firm in Wilmington, Delaware. That's where I hoped to plant roots. They handled mostly divorce and custody disputes. It was hard work, but it felt real. Human. Mr. Fletcher, the senior partner, took a chance on me early. "You've got fire, Marcus," he told me after I nailed a complicated custody summary. "But remember, law isn't about feelings. You can't lose yourself in someone else's pain. Make the system fairer, but don't break yourself trying." I took that to heart until the day everything cracked. It was a quiet morning in March. I was in the corner office, buried in affidavits, when Jamie, the secretary, knocked. "Mr. Fletcher wants to see you. He's got a case he thinks you should." Lead, that was big, a case of my own. I grabbed my notes, heart racing, and stepped into Fletcher's office. He didn't waste time. "This is a domestic violence case," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "Client's name is Sarah Whitmore. She's filing for divorce and wants an emergency protection order. Says her husband's been abusing her." I nodded, flipping the folder open, scribbling names and details. But then, my eyes stopped cold. The respect. David Whitmore. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hand went limp, pen slipping between my fingers. My heart pounded like a war drum. Fletcher leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "You're right, Marcus." I swallowed hard. I know him." His voice sharpened. "Know him how? Is this a conflict?" My mind was spinning. David Whitmore, my mother's second husband. The man who used to come home with a belt in one hand and a Bible in the other. The man who buried my childhood in silence and shame. Part of me wanted to leave that room, to say I couldn't do it. But then I thought of Sarah. I didn't know her well, just in passing. Years ago, but she'd married the man who tore my family apart, and now she was trapped, asking for help. If I walked away, who would protect her? I looked Fletcher square in the eye. "It's personal, but I can handle it. I want to help her." He studied me, his silence heavy. Finally, he gave a tight nod. "All right. But if it gets too close, you come to me. Don't try to be a hero." I nodded, grabbed the file, and returned to my desk, heart pounding. I opened the folder again. Sarah had submitted photos, bruises across her ribs, a black eye, swollen lips. Her statement was detailed, raw, and eerily familiar. "He told me, if I ever left him, he'd find me," she'd written. "He knows where I sleep." I clenched my fists. This wasn't just a case anymore. This was history knocking on my door, demanding I finally answer. If you were in my shoes, would you take that case? Would you risk it all to bring down someone who broke you? Let me know in the comments what would you have done. And if you've ever watched someone suffer in silence, someone you loved, then you understand why I couldn't walk away. This time, I had the power, and I wasn't going to let him win. Have you ever looked someone in the eye and realized you didn't hate them anymore? Just pitied them? That was me, sitting in the conference room, reading through texts that would haunt anyone threatening messages from her abuser. Alongside them sat a medical report, photos of bruises so raw, so familiar, they made my stomach twist. I didn't just see her, Pen, I saw my mother's. I saw those quiet nights when she stood at the kitchen sink, thinking I couldn't hear her sobbing. I saw the trembling hands she tried to keep steady for us. That's when I agreed to meet Clara, not for her sake, not even for justice, but because I needed answers. I needed to see what kind of person lets a monster break them without fighting back. Or maybe, someone who tried to fight back and lost. The meeting was set at our law office, with my supervisor, Mr. Peterson, overseeing it. I waited, arms folded, unsure of what to expect. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. This wasn't the woman who once barked orders and slammed doors. This was someone else. Her skin was pale, her eyes sunken, shoulders slumped under invisible weight. She looked like a candle that had been burning too long. Her voice cracked. Noah, is that really you? I nodded, keeping my tone neutral. I'm the intern, working your case. Let's start from the beginning. Tell me everything. Clara sat across from me, gripping a glass of water so tightly, I thought it might shatter. Her hands trembled as she began. At first, it was just yelling, she said, staring down like the carpet could swallow her whole. Then he started hitting me. He said if I ever left, he'd kill me. I kept listening. My jaw clenched, but I didn't say a word. I remembered her face the day she told Lily she was useless. I remembered her laughing when my dad kicked me out. But now, seeing her like this, I didn't feel rage. I felt recognition. She had become what he wanted all of us to be, small, silent, broken, and even if a part of me still blamed her for the past, I couldn't deny it, now she was a victim too. And victims deserve to be heard. From that moment, I went all in. I studied domestic violence laws like my life depended on it. I compiled every message, every medical document, every scrap of truth. My father, of course, brought in a flashy defense attorney, the type who oozes confidence and calls everyone partner. But the facts were louder than the charm. The morning of the trial, my heart pounded in my chest like a warning bell. I'd stood in courtrooms before as an intern, always just outside the spotlight. But this was different. This was my family. My past. My scars. When my father walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. His suit hung looser on his frame. His hair had thinned, grayed at the edges, but his eyes, still icy, still hollow. He glanced at me, lips curling. "You little bastard," he muttered. I stared straight ahead. I wouldn't give him what he wanted. Not this time. The trial opened. Clara took the stand. Her voice trembled at first, but she found strength in the telling. She spoke about the nights she thought she wouldn't survive, the times he dragged her by the hair, the times he locked her in a room until she stopped crying. I watched the jury. They leaned in. One woman wiped a tear. Then came the cross-examination. His attorney was ruthless. He called her a liar, accused her of exaggeration, even suggested she had injured herself for attention. I wanted to jump out of my seat, but Mr. Peterson's hand came down gently on my arm. "Stay calm, Noah. We have the truth. Let it speak. Now it's your turn. If you've ever seen justice, try to claw its way through silence. Drop a comment. Have you ever had to face someone who hurt your family and not explode? Let's talk about it, because some stories aren't just about justice, they're about learning when to forgive, when to fight, and when to listen. Have you ever looked someone dead in the eyes, knowing the truth, and still feared the lies might win? That was me. Standing in front of 12 strangers, heart pounding, palms sweating. I wasn't just presenting a KCA, was peeling open old wounds, hoping the truth bled enough to be believed. I talked about domestic violence, not in abstract terms, but in raw, broken truths. How it doesn't just bruise the skin, it splinters your sense of self. I laid it all out for them, photos, messages, our records. And even though I never mentioned my mum or myself, every word echoed with the shadow of our pain. My voice didn't shake, but inside, I was trembling. When I returned to my seat, Mr. Peterson, our attorney, gave me a small nod. There was pride in his eyes. I could feel it. But then he took the stand. My father, and just like that, everything twisted. He wept. He put on this heartfelt act like a damn Broadway star, said he loved Clara, that he never meant to hurt her. "I'm just a man who's made some mistakes," he whispered, his voice cracking. I wanted to scream. Instead, I clenched my fists under the table, digging my nails into my palms until I felt pain. The worst part, I knew the jury might fall for it. People always want to believe in redemption more than they believe in harm. The trial dragged on for 2 days, each second like walking barefoot on broken glass. That night, I didn't sleep, just sat in my dark apartment, staring at one of my mum's old drawing sunflowers, sketched in soft pencil. I whispered to her, "Mum, I'm trying. I swear, I'm trying to do the right thing. I didn't expect an answer, but for a moment, I felt her. In the stillness, like a hand on my shoulder, steadying me. Verdict day came. The judge's voice was steady, emotionless, but each word hit like a punch. My father was found guilty. 6 months in prison. Mandatory rehab. Clara got her protective order. The divorce was approved. He hung his head, but when he looked up at me, his eyes still burned. Not with shame, with hatred. The same hatred that used to make my stomach knot as a kid. Clara turned to me, her cheeks streaked with tears. "Thank you, Noah," she whispered. I nodded. Didn't say a word, because I didn't do this for her. I didn't even do it for justice. I did it for my mum, for Megan, for every silent scream we held in 4 years, for every time we had to pretend things were fine. As I stepped out of that courtroom, I thought I'd feel free, but I didn't. Not really. I felt lighter, sure, but underneath, there was this ache, like I'd just buried someone. Weeks passed. Delaware's autumn painted the streets in gold and fire. The air had that bite that hinted at winter. I stood outside the prison gate, hands stuffed in my jacket pockets, breath fogging the air. I didn't know why I came. Maybe to prove something. Maybe to make peace. Maybe to confirm that he was human, not just a ghost in my nightmares. Inside, the visitation room was dull and cold. The kind of place where time doesn't pass, it just drags. I sat down, waiting there. He walked in. He looked smaller, not physically, but in every other way. Thinner, older, hunched. His hair had gone almost entirely gray. His skin sagged like it couldn't hold up his past anymore. His eyes, those eyes I used to fear, were empty. Hollow dot. He picked up the receiver and stared at me through the glass. "Quiet, Noah," he said finally. I didn't flinch. "I'm not here to yell at you." He gave a dry, bitter laugh. "You came to spit in my face." I shook my head slowly. "No, Dad. I came to ask you something." He blinked. "Why? Why did you do it? To Mum, to me, to Clara. I need to know." He stared for a long moment, then smirked, but it was weak, like a man too tired to even fake it. "You think I'm a monster," he said. "Maybe I am, but life's not easy, Noah. I tried. I did. But the booze, it took over. I lost control." He paused, looked down at his trembling hands. "Now tell me something. If you were in my shoes, would you believe him? Let me know in the comments. Can people like him change, or do they just rot behind the masks they wear?" I still don't know the answer, but that day, as I left the prison, I didn't look back, and I haven't since. That's exactly what happened the last time I saw my father. He sat hunched in the corner of that sterile, dimly lit visitor's room, hands shaking, fingers like dry twigs, eyes hollow. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he whispered. "I don't deserve it." And he was right. He didn't. But, instead of rage or fear, I felt nothing. Not cold, not numb, just quiet. For once, I saw him not as the monster from my childhood, but as a man damaged, defeated, and utterly lost. A man who had scorched every good thing in his life. "Not forgiving you," I said, my voice steady. "Not because I don't want to, but because I can't forget what you did to Mum, to Lily, to me." His eyes flickered, but he didn't argue. Just nodded slow, resigned. "But," I added, "I hope you find a way to fix something. Even if it's just yourself." No reply. Just silence, and the distant hum of fluorescent lights. I stood, gently set the phone down, and walked out. No dramatic exit. Just the soft click of a door behind me, and a strange, unexpected lightness in my chest. Because I hadn't come for closure, I came to end something, and I did, back at the law center. I dove into my work, representing women and children, trying to escape what I once did. Every case was brutal, every story too familiar. But each one was also a second chance for them, and maybe, in a way, for me. You see, I'd made a promise to my mother before she died. Not with words, but with actions. I promised to protect the vulnerable, to fight for voices like Lily's, voices that were silenced, too young, too violently. Looking back now, I see how much life has taught me. Hard lessons, ones I'd never wish on anyone, but still lessons that shaped me. I learned that strength doesn't roar. Sometimes, it's just getting up. Again, that justice isn't always clean or quick, but it's always worth chasing. That real love, whether from a mother, a sister, or the family you choose, isn't soft. It's steel. It held me up when I couldn't stand. It carried me through nights I didn't think I'd survive. And here's what I'd tell you. Whoever you are, reading this, don't let your pain cage you. Let it forge you. Let it turn into action, kindness, change, even if it's just holding the door open for someone who looks like they're about to fall apart. Even if it's listening, even if it's surviving, because that spark, that flicker of light, it could be anything, a memory, a dream, a stranger's kindness, a child's laugh, a belief, however faint, that you matter. Grab it, and never let go. As for me, I don't know what the road ahead holds, but I do know this: I'll keep walking it. For Mum, for Lily, for every silent scream I hear echo through the halls of our shelter, and when I close my eyes, I still see her under that oak tree, my mother, smiling gently, as if to say,